Thank you for tuning in. Young people have a brand new vision for this country. As we speak, hundreds of campuses across this country are working to make their campuses and their communities models of the clean energy future. Through the Power Vote campaign, more than 300,000 young people from UW-Madison to Appalachian State University have signed the Power Vote pledge, saying that they'll turn out to vote in record numbers on November 4th and hold our elected officials accountable and ensure that they usher in a clean and just energy revolution in this country. Young people know that coal and oil and nuclear have dominated our energy policy for far too long, and it's time that our politicians on the local, state, and federal level stand up and rise to the occasion. Clean energy is worth fighting for and worth voting for. It is now my distinct honor to introduce the former Vice President of the United States and Nobel laureate Al Gore. As we all know, Al Gore's leadership has paved the way for the issue of climate change to take center stage. He understands that young people are a centerpiece of ensuring that we usher in a clean and just energy revolution in this country.
Well, thank you very much, Jesse, and it's very inspiring to hear about the work of the Energy Action Coalition and the Power Vote campaign, and I want to congratulate you in your role as director of the coalition, and the We campaign, wecansolveit.org, with the Alliance for Climate Protection is really proud to join with you all. And I want to say a word of thanks to all of the young people who are gathered at hundreds of campuses around the country. Thank you very much, and thank you for what you're going to do immediately after this. Go out and start 6 days of intensive get out the vote activity, and I have read about a lot of the imaginative work that's going on different campuses, and I want to congratulate especially the 3 campuses that won the competition for the most students to RSVP and to get involved, and they are the University of Maryland at College Park. Congratulations. Portland State, where one of my daughters did some graduate work. Congratulations. And the University of Georgia. Congratulations. And to all of the other campuses, congratulations to all of you guys also. I want to say just a few words about what is motivating us to get involved like this and to have this level of activity. It's just really important to hold elected officials accountable for what they do. And during these final days of the campaign, this is your chance to make it really clear that young people in particular and college students in particular are going to vote, you're going to get involved, and you're going to vote on the basis of this agenda, and then hold the elected officials accountable for making the right decisions about energy in particular. You know, we face a climate crisis, and for way too long, politicians in both parties have too often just set aside the real solutions, and we've had business as usual. And business as usual is unacceptable where the climate crisis is concerned. But here's something to think about. The climate crisis, the energy crisis, the economic crisis, the national security crisis, because at least one of the reasons why we went into Iraq, even though they didn't attack us, was one of the many reasons was to try to secure access to the largest deposits of oil in the Persian Gulf. So all of these crises have a common thread running through them, and that common thread is our ridiculous, absurd, dangerous overdependence on carbon-based fuels that are dirty, expensive, rising in cost over time, and posing this deadly threat to the livability of our planet. If you grab hold of that common thread and pull it, all of those crises begin to unravel, and then you hold in your hand the answer to all of them, which is to switch to renewable, carbon-free energy. That's why we need a dramatic program and commitment here in the United States to switch to 100% renewable electricity and carbon-free electricity within 10 years. Now, for those who say that's too idealistic, it's not. First of all, we've got to do it. But secondly, remember when President John F. Kennedy, now y'all are too young for this, but you know what I'm talking about. When President John F. Kennedy issued a challenge to the nation to put a person on the moon and return that person safely within 10 years, some people said then that was impossible to do. But 8 years and 2 months later, Neil Armstrong set foot on the surface of the moon. Now, at the time of that moon landing, the average age of the systems engineers on the floor of that control room in Houston was 26 years old. Now think about that for a minute, because what that means is, at the time when President Kennedy issued that challenge, the average age of those men and women was 18 years old. So young people today, college students today, who are tuning in to this incredible climate crisis that has to be solved, and these other crises that are so closely related to it, you can make an amazing difference. And the place to start is by making sure that you vote and by making sure that others get out to vote. You know, we've had this debate about a $700 billion bailout in the financial crisis. Well, $700 billion is the annual cost of bailing out America's economy by sending that much money every single year to foreign countries in return for oil. $700 billion is the cost so far of the Iraq War. So all these are connected, and the solutions are connected too. Because in order to stimulate the economy and get our economy moving again, we've got to put people back to work, and the best way to put them back to work is with green jobs. Insulating homes, installing the new windows and light bulbs, and building the solar panels, and building the windmills and the geothermal plants, and the unified national smart grid. These are jobs that won't be shipped over to some foreign country. They're jobs that stay right here at home, and they build an infrastructure that will secure our nation's future during your lifetimes. We need a one-off investment to transform our energy infrastructure from one that depends on these dangerous and expensive carbon fuels to one that depends on fuels that are free forever. So now is the time for us to take this step. And so I'm calling on all of you to redouble your efforts to get this done. And I think we've got some questions, right?
We do.
So I'm looking forward to answering the questions, and whoever you're going to call on them.
Vice President Gore is just getting a call on his iPhone. That is how cool he is.
I forgot to turn it off.
Okay, so the first question comes from Celia Roberts in Colorado. And Celia wants to know, how do you propose that we move forward on the climate change crisis, given the financial situation that our country currently faces?
Well, actually, the financial crisis, the economic crisis, is the perfect time to make the investments that are necessary to transform our energy infrastructure. You know, you probably heard this old cliche. I mean, it's not that old a cliche, but people have been saying it for a few years. And it's literally true that in both Chinese and Japanese, they use the same written characters. And the way they say the word crisis is with two characters back to back. The first one means danger. The second one means opportunity. Now, there's nothing good about this economic crisis, but it is simultaneously an opportunity. And as I was saying before, we need to create employment opportunities, and they shouldn't be just make work jobs. Let's build what we need to build. We need to build a renewable, clean energy infrastructure. And that puts money in the pockets of people who will then help to get the economy moving in the right direction again. And we need, and not just based on senseless consumption, but on sustainable economic progress. And so that's why the economic crisis and the climate crisis not only have a lot of the same causes, they have the same solutions.
Great. Our next question comes from Luke Dalton right here in Tennessee. And Luke wants to know, besides our vote, which we know hundreds of thousands of young people will go and do on November 4th, what is the single most important action that we can take to change our environmental policy on the local, state, and federal level?
Well, speaking out, first of all, learn as much about it as you can and become an advocate, and then speak out. And you know, it's interesting. This climate crisis is so well known, and people are now more aware of it, but the sense of urgency is not always there in the same way that it should be. And so we've got to create a situation where people who are campaigning for office and people who are already in elected office, when they meet people on the sidewalk, we need to create a situation where half of the people they see are saying to them, what are you going to do to solve the climate crisis? And you can be an advocate for getting that new sense of urgency there. Last night I was in Memphis, Tennessee. And it was a very moving experience because it was at the National Civil Rights Museum, and then the banquet in the evening was to benefit the National Civil Rights Museum. And a lot of the veterans of the civil rights movement from the 60s, the 50s and 60s were there. And you know, they were real heroes, men and women who, when they were college students, a lot of them, they really put themselves on the line. But that generation of young people were the ones that brought about the civil rights revolution. Not just those heroes who were out there on the front lines, but young people, and I was a little bit younger than they were at that time, and I remember vividly when my generation, way back then, asked our parents and our elders to please explain why it's not incredibly morally wrong to discriminate against people on the basis of race or skin color, ethnicity, religion, whatever. And when those older folks then couldn't give a good persuasive answer, then that's when the civil rights movement really started to win. That's when the laws began to change. And you know, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. drew a tremendous amount of inspiration from Mahatma Gandhi. A lot of people know that. They don't know, a lot of those same people are not as aware of the fact that Mahatma Gandhi was influenced by Henry David Thoreau, who wrote on Walden Pond and was one of the earliest environmentalists here in the United States. And he advocated a lot of the ideas that Mahatma Gandhi then advocated and that Dr. Martin Luther King advocated. So Mahatma Gandhi used a word in the language of his birth, satyagraha, which they tell me roughly translates into English as truth force. And if you educate yourselves and become a persuasive advocate and you speak the truth about this climate crisis and the opportunities that are available to us to solve it and make our country better and stronger, make our world better, then you will be amazed at how much progress you can make. And we've got to have it because we don't have all the time in the world here. We are getting dangerously close to a point where if we don't have action, we run the risk of losing the chance to retrieve a favorable climate balance and save the future of civilization. We're going to do that, but we've got to have the action now.
Great. I have one last question for you from Andrew Nasden at the University of Maryland. There are so many different kinds of solutions being talked about right now to address our climate crisis. On television, we hear from the clean coal industry, we hear about more drilling, we hear about all different kinds of solutions. In terms of the different solutions that are being proposed, Andrew wants to know which ones do you think are the best solutions moving forward?
Well, I've studied this and worked on this for a long time. You know, I first got involved in this issue when I myself was a college student. And more or less by chance. I mean, I took the course, so it wasn't totally random, but it was by chance that the professor was this great scientist who was the first person to measure CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere. And so that got me involved, and I followed his work and began to have hearings when I got to the Congress some years later. And throughout all that time, I have looked hard for the best solutions for this crisis. And here's what I think. You know, some people may disagree with this, but based on my long study of this, clearly number one is efficiency and conservation. And that sounds kind of dull to some people, but actually, when you look at how much energy we waste completely every single day, it's amazing. And now with the computer revolution, we have the ability to redesign and reinvent a lot of the systems and the buildings, the vehicles, all of the different things that we use in our daily lives to make them much more efficient, and in the process save huge amounts of energy and reduce the incredible amount of carbon pollution that is being dumped into the Earth's atmosphere every day. 70 million tons is being dumped into the atmosphere every 24 hours. That cannot be allowed to continue. So efficiency and conservation is number one. Then secondly, renewable energy is the wave of the future. More energy from the sun hits the surface of the Earth in 45 minutes than is needed to power the entire global economy for a full year's time. And that sounds like some kind of trick statistic, but it's not. It really is true. To put it another way, if you wanted to use today's photovoltaic technology and concentrating solar thermal technology to supply all of the electricity for the United States of America, basically the area that you would have to cover with those solar cells, roughly equivalent to a square in the southwestern desert 100 miles on a side. And if you look at a map of the United States and put that little square on that map, sounds like it's a big area 100 miles on a side, but it's tiny compared to the vast southwestern desert. And of course, it needs to be done carefully with respect for all the land and so forth, but it can be done. And in order to use solar energy and wind energy and geothermal energy, we also have to have a major national investment in a national unified smart grid. And that's also a key part of the solution. So in addition to that, we should electrify our automobile fleet, because you hear a lot about the fact that in order to use renewable energy, you need batteries, and they're working on improving these batteries. Well, by making a transition away from the internal combustion engine and away from gasoline and diesel cars toward electric plug-in cars, that is a kind of battery, because when we make that transition, the electric car fleet becomes a means of storing electricity. And by connecting them to a smart grid, we enable a lot of the savings for efficiency and conservation that I was talking about. But the Unified National Smart Grid has something else that I want to just briefly mention. It also has to have the long distance, high capacity, high voltage, next generation, long distance transmission lines that are buried, that bring the electricity from the areas in the desert where the solar energy can most efficiently be produced, and from the Dakotas and the mountain states where the wind energy is concentrated, and from the different locations around our country where geothermal energy is present in abundance and can produce renewable electricity. Now, that would be a considerable investment of about $400 billion over a 10-year period. But look, first of all, at some of the things that they have just put that much money in at the drop of a hat after the financial crisis, but that's not the best argument. Here's a better argument. American business loses $120 billion every single year because of failures in the electricity grid that we have today, and unplanned breakdowns, cascading failures. So this new generation smart grid would more than pay for itself in only 3.5 years. And once we have it built, then that enables us to rely on the solar energy and wind energy and geothermal energy as the mainstay of our energy future.
Great. Final words
Yeah.
to our audience today.
Well, I want to end where I began. First of all, by saying thank you very much for your willingness to get involved in this effort. I can't even begin to tell you how important it is. You probably heard the famous saying from Margaret Mead, the distinguished anthropologist, who said, "Don't ever doubt that a small group of people can change the world. Indeed, that's the only way the world has ever been changed." Right now, the number of activists who are getting involved in trying to motivate people to vote on the basis of this issue and then hold the elected officials accountable is a large and growing number. We have everything we need to solve the climate crisis. You've heard me say this before, some of you. The one exception may be political will, but political will is a renewable resource, and you are renewing it. You know, many years from now, people will look back on this time, just as I was telling you last night, they were looking back on the great civil rights revolution midway through the last century. And people there were saying how much they've enjoyed telling their grandparents about what they did when they were young. You guys are in a position to make history right now. And this election is the turning point, because the turnout is the key to getting enough young people involved, regardless of who they vote for. If young people are out there getting involved on the issue of the climate crisis, the energy action agenda, power vote, to solve the We campaign, repower America, make the shift to renewable energy, stop the climate crisis, we've got to do it. And the next few days, the next 6 days before the election represents the key time. And for the rest of your lives, you will have an opportunity to look back at what began during these coming 6 days. So a lot depends on it. You can do it. We're counting on you, and thank you very much. And Jesse, thank you again. You and your colleagues have done a super job in organizing this.
Well, thank you, Vice President Gore, for your leadership, for your inspiring words this evening. For the past 3 months, the Energy Action Coalition, through the Power Vote campaign, have been out there in front of every race, local races, statewide races, federal races, raising the important issues, forcing candidates of all political persuasions to really answer the tough questions, to make it clear that young people in this country, they want green jobs, they want massive investment in clean energy, they really want a new green economy. And I, of course, share your thoughts, Vice President Gore, that we stand in the brink of a historic opportunity. This is it, my friends. I have traveled all over the country. I have seen so many of you work day in and day out. And let's take these next 6 days to mobilize millions of our peers. We need to get out the power vote so that we can repower America. And once we turn out to vote in record numbers on November 4th, you know and I know that our work will only be beginning, because candidates win and lose on election day, but our fight will continue for the clean energy future. So on behalf of the Alliance for Climate Protection and the We campaign, the Energy Action Coalition, and the Power Vote campaign, we'll see you out there in the field as we get out the vote over the next 6 days. Thank you very much.